Okay, we first of all, man, what a game last night. Fun to watch, and certainly excited for Coach Golden and his team. You know, as they looks like they're peaking at the right time here with the tournament coming up. So, and I would say a great time of the year on the University of Florida campus relative to all the spring sports, ramping it up, and we've got some elite coaches and elite programs, some really talented athletes. So I'm excited for those teams as they get going. You know, we just finished up our first 8-week training block. We finished up phase 1 and phase 2, and very pleased with the progress that we've made. You know, obviously the strength conditioning program, the sports science piece there with nutrition. I think being in year 2 with that group of people from a performance side, I felt like we took a big step in terms of progress with the players, and I think that will be evident as our guys take the field for the first day of spring practice today. So, you know, lots happened since the last time we were together, so I know you got a lot of questions, but I do think that the spring practice presents an opportunity to really teach not only conceptually what we do, offense, defense, and special teams, but also I think fundamentally a chance to start from scratch. And then I think it creates opportunity to develop leaders, new roles on the team. We have new staff members that will be going through our process for the first time. So I think these things are all beneficial. They're imperative. And we certainly have high expectations. In no way are we satisfied with where we're at. We've got a ton of potential. This group has been impressive to me so far, so we're excited to work with them. Yeah, simply put, the ball's coming out today. It's time to take the grass, and I'm looking forward to working with this group. What questions do we have?
How will Russ Callaway's role maybe be different this spring camp than it was last year? Just what is he going to be doing, and is he going to continue working with the tight end group? I assume yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think Russ will still work with the tight ends. We do have John Donovan in that room as well, which I think will be beneficial for that group. He's got significant experience as an assistant coach, coordinator, play caller. But I think a big part will be Russ's just the way he allocates his time, you know, especially once we get to the season. But even this time of year, relative to the installations, the scripts, the unit meetings, I think just being in front of the players on a consistent basis. I thought he did a great job in that role last year, and I think he'll take on even more in this cycle. So, yeah, I'm excited about it. We certainly, Russ is deserving. I think he's got the respect of the staff and respect of the players, and really one of the better young offensive minds, I think, in college football. Yeah, no, I think that, you know, you're always sorting through narrative. You know, I think the big message for our team is the way I would phrase it is like, hey, look, we're not worried about yesterday. We're not worried about tomorrow. You know, our entire focus is on today. You know, there's always a lot of noise on the back end. There's always a lot of hype on the front end. And I think we got to live in the middle. You know, we're in there where the work is getting done. And I think if we can remain process-oriented and just get consumed with improvement, we try to break up our year into phases, you know, small chunks of time with objectives, with goals, and work our tail off one day at a time. You know, and I think that, yeah, I think that we have adjusted and adapt. I think a lot of the profession has settled in a little bit. I think we're a lot more familiar with player acquisition. I think we've gotten more and more familiar with the evaluation process in terms of what's required in our league at the top of college football. And then I think you learn a lot about the football piece too in terms of how you put your team together and what it takes to win our conference and win a national championship.
Trey Wilson, Khalil Jackson, Aaron Weeks, will they be starting camp or what's their status?
Yeah, so good question. I know, you know, you guys really, here's how we're going to handle the injury piece. Basically what I'm going to do here, you guys know that we're not obligated to give you an injury report. You're going to have access to practice, and you're going to see a list of players, a number of players that will be modified in terms of their participation in spring practice. So I'm going to go through those guys and then kind of give you an opportunity to ask a few questions. But the following players will be limited. Caleb Banks has a foot injury. Sharif Denson still on his way back in return to play mode with the foot from the postseason. Chad Gasper arrived with the ACL reconstruction. Aaron Gates and Jameer Grimsley obviously had the knee injuries. Pup Howard has a soft tissue injury. DJ Lagway will be limited in terms of his participation in spring from a throwing component with the shoulder and then also the lower body. D.D. Johnson had shoulder surgery there, so he'll be back half of spring. We'll get him back. Paul Kessler has a lower back injury. Jamari Lyons is still, he's made a lot of progress, but still lower leg. Kayron Rackley has a hip. Stephon Shivers has a low back. Bryce Thornton has an ankle. Trayon Webb is still on his way back from the lower leg injury. And then Eugene Wilson is still in return to play with the hip. A lot of these guys may participate in some form, and then we'll have some that won't be able to participate because of where they're at relative to the surgery and return to play. So, and I can address specifics, when I'm in front of you, but as far as our players, our assistant coaches, injuries are going to be off limits this spring.
How much will DJ be able to do?
Yeah, so I think some lower body, some shoulder. I think our intentions here are to be very smart. I do think he'll be limited in throwing activities, but he'll participate in all practices otherwise. And we've done a lot of homework here relative to the things that he went through as a player. I mean, he was an absolute warrior and a great competitor that showed toughness. And we've consulted with quite a few experts here from a UFL, from a national perspective, as we do with a lot of our players, in terms of second opinion. So I think in general, he'll be able to do quite a bit, but there will be some limitations.
How much do you expand the playbook with him going into his second year?
Yeah, I think probably where really we would start with, okay, fundamentally, all right, these are the areas where we got to really take next steps. I think last year was a lot more about what to do. Now it's the how to do it. It's why we're doing it. It's down and distance. It's field zones. It's situational football. And again, think about his progression. Took 1 million reps with the twos, and then all of a sudden he's thrown into the fire there. So huge benefit from an experience standpoint on game day, but also in practice. But yeah, I think in general, much like any player in the second year, there'll be a lot of things that he can do that we'll try to complement.
What will be Tramel's availability?
Tramel actually has been cleared. He's probably not 100%, but our quarterbacks are in black jerseys, so obviously no contact there. But he has been able to do everything in phase 2. There were some limitations. I think he probably would tell you he's not 100%, but he's able to do everything we asked the quarterback to do.
What do you anticipate Trey Wilson will be able to do this spring?
Yeah, he'll be able to do almost everything. Yeah, I think we're managing volume right now and return to play more than anything. So he's full speed, routes on air, 7-on-7, and then we're just basically compartmentalizing the player load and trying to manage a guy who, was put on the shelf for a while. So we got to ramp up his activity and be smart there.
The guys that you ran through, which ones will actually be able to go through position drills or we'll see out there versus being off to the side?
Yeah, I think you'll be able to report that once you get out there.
With 2 injuries at the star position,
Yeah.
play that spot and some other things?
Sure. Well, I think first of all, I would say the three safety spots are all very much, from a concept standpoint, there's a ton of carryover, right? Especially with as much FIB that we get. So you're going to see these rookies get an opportunity. I think Josiah, Greg, Laganza, Drake. I think those four in particular are going to get there's a huge opportunity for them to take a ton of reps this spring. So obviously Gates and Sharif Gates will be not participating, and then obviously Sharif will be limited. We anticipate getting him back at some point.
You've had a few coaching hires in the last couple of weeks since we last spoke to you. Could you just detail a little bit, adding Darren Wilson to the staff, and also for Robert Ballard, he's going to be off field, correct?
Yeah, Darren Wilson obviously spent a year with us, year one. He had worked with Patrick Toney and Pete Golding at UTSA, so there was some familiarity with the system. His relationship with Coach Roberts, and also his relationship with Robert Balla. And Coach Balla coached the inside backers. And there are no off-field coaches these days, right? So we're trying to take advantage of the rule. Coach Roberts obviously will be the defensive coordinator and be walking around. So we've got a coach for each position on defense.
Going back to DJ, that is all carryover from the season, from December, or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that he didn't have any surgery or anything?
Right. Yeah, all postseason. Just really, we do that with every player on the team in terms of, okay, hey, lingering issues, go back and attack those and then adjust their workflow. And again, this is not a normal here.
What are you hoping to see from the early enrollees in terms of approach and how they go about things?
Yeah, first of all, really excited about the group. I think and we've got, I think, 7 more coming that I think are also impressive. The group as a whole, I think, has showed a maturity, a work ethic. I think there's opportunity for that group to impact our team. I think, at certain positions in particular, I think we've added a lot of good players. So, not as many not as many portal players as years past, but a very impressive, ready-to-play high school group. So I think this spring will determine a lot in terms of what their role will be on the team, but we've got several that are very capable.
We asked you back in November about the NCAA roster cuts, and there wasn't a lot of guidance there, or maybe doing a scout team or practicing. Has there been any updates on when that deadline will be and what your guys' plan would be as far as practice?
Yeah, great question. I think the 105 will be determined right before the first competition for each team. So we'll have access to the players that we have currently until then. But we will have to make a decision and determine, hey, these are the 105 players that will be able to be available for competition and practice from that point forward. So outside of that, there is a ton of work to be done. What does the next spring semester look like relative to Title IX, relative to the settlement? So a lot to be determined here between now and then.
Have they mentioned anything about what you said with replacement players? If the guy goes down with a season-ending injury, did you call someone up and he's just a walk-on?
Yeah, to be determined. I think we're all, as coaches, seeking clarity there, and I think it's a really important topic. And there's been a ton of narrative about it out there. So I think we probably had one of the more productive, better meetings from an SEC AD head coach meetings in February in New Orleans. And I think that was one of the topics that was discussed. But I do think we're making progress. Is it perfect? No, but I do think that we've got really smart people that are working hard on that.
Who all gets some work at nose tackle, and how important is it to develop some depth there with the guys you lost?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think, first of all, Mekhi Burrow was able to play a pretty big role as a rookie, and I thought he played well for us. And then really smart player, and obviously big, heavy-handed, good good from a fundamental perspective as well, coming from a great high school program. Tavares Brown is taking reps there, and then Stephon Shivers is also taking reps there. So, and, DeAndre's got some position flex. We know that Banks, when he gets back, he could very well swing in there. So, Jamari, was obviously, we thought of him as a starter prior to the injury. So I think as he gets back, he'll be a factor. He's got position flex. He could play nose or in. So a lot of those guys that were in year one last year, I think will take a huge step. Big offseason for them.
Billy, on the Nick Polk hire, obviously you interviewed, or at least spoke to Jim Nagy, Dave Caldwell, have some big fish there. And you go with Nick. How much of that was, why Nick? And then how much of that, what does that say about LaFrance? You want to maybe have LaFrance kind of take the lead there?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, I think that we had an incredible group of candidates. I mean, I think each one of those candidates were great candidates and could have done the job. I think Nick fit the skill set. I think the knowledge and experience relative to cap management. I think the contract, the construction of contracts, the strategy behind that, 17 years in the National Football League, been on the coaching side, been on the personnel side, worked with owners in Atlanta, worked with a number of head coaches and general managers. And I also think his experience as an agent representing coaches in the current landscape. But Nick's been a guy who we had a prior relationship to. Spent a ton of time with him researching strategy around what we had done before. So I thought there was familiarity there. He was living in Gainesville. I think his relationship with our staff, it was the right fit. And I think we were able to add Ben Elsner as well from the 33rd team. And I think both of those there was an agreement there. They would be excited to work together. We're excited about Chad Lucas taking on a bigger responsibility in the organization from a recruiting relations, business relations standpoint. So he'll have responsibility within the front office to go along with being the assistant receiver coach. And then obviously Jacob is more on the evaluation side. And I think he's obviously earned a promotion and acquired more responsibility. So we're very pleased with where we're at there. I think that whole dynamic. We also get some administrative experience with Nick, so from an oversight standpoint, he can help me with staffing, budgets, be a great resource to Josh Thompson, who's an incredible member of the organization and has done a great job. So we get an experienced person, a little bit older, to go along with a lot of young, talented people. I think it was the right fit for us.
You mentioned kind of DJ's growth last year in film study and decision-making and so forth. These physical limitations, does that present, possibly another opportunity in that end in the spring? What you do and how would you do that?
Yeah, I think we're going to be really intentional about how we design every practice, for him. I think in terms of we've even talked about letting him be the signal caller. Like today in 7-on-7, I think we're going to let him walkie-talkie the play into the quarterback, give him some of that. We're going to, as certain periods, he'll be able to do more than others, right? So I think that'll progress as we go in spring, but we're going to challenge him. I think, when growth and comfort can't coexist, right? So, I think for him, we're pushing the envelope, trying to make him uncomfortable. I still think it's his team, so from a leadership perspective, he's got a much different role and voice, right? I also think he's got to navigate success a little bit. Can he separate noise and hype? Can he live in the middle there? Can he become process-oriented? Can he separate process and outcome? Can he continue to be consistent in that regard? So maintaining that humility, staying grounded, and then also pushing the envelope from a development standpoint. There's a lot to do there, and I know he'd be the first to tell you he's excited about that.
We saw Bryce Lovett start at right tackle against Tulane. Is that where you think he'll start out at spring camp? And can you just discuss a little bit the competition on the offensive line, even with some starters coming back, just what you think?
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the, so far, I would say in phase two, just being around that group, it's an impressive group as a whole. It's by far, we've come a long way. I think Rob and John have done a good job. Caleb and Riley have done a good job there. And then we're finally, I think all those players that we recruited in year 1, 2, 3, here we go, right? So Bryce will be the right tackle today, but Bryce could play all 5. We have a ton of confidence in him. Caden Jones, Devin Manuel, Fletcher Westfall. I would tell you that Dyson Medlock have been impressive so far, right? So I think the tackle position in particular, now Damian and Cam are inside to go along with Najee. Rod Kearney's playing guard primarily. I've been pleased with Zandamela. We've moved Mascall to center. That has been, he's had a good 8 weeks. So in general, Westfall, Wangoy, all that group is headed in the right direction. I may have missed one. I apologize if I did.
Your 2 leading receivers last year came out of the portal, and now they're headed to the NFL. How can Jay Mike kind of follow in their footsteps and specifically take over the role left by Elijah?
Yeah, I think that, first of all, man, what a great combine for the Gators, right? I thought that all those guys, we were really proud of that group as a whole. And look, we saw the physical performance, the measurements, but I think what I really was excited is all the texts and phone calls I got about the interview process and how well prepared and how impressive they were as people. We talk about being 4D Gators, 4-dimensional Gators, and really being a student of the game. And I think a lot of the feedback that we got there was that all those guys impressed in the meeting setting. So we've got 4 really talented new receivers. I think the 3 high school players, VB3, Nashon, and Dallas, and then you throw J. Mike in there. And Muiz is coming, in late May, early June. So I think 5 new players to go along with getting Trey back. At some point we're hopeful that K-Jack will be back to himself. And then here comes, Mizell, Tank Hawkins, T.J. Abrams. In general, that group is faster, more explosive. I think the skill level's been impressive so far. So going to be a very, very competitive room. J. Mike is obviously in his final year, kind of a decision NFL or draft. And I think just to get him, 6'2" and a quarter, I think he weighed 214 pounds the other day. He's already hit 23 miles an hour. He's a 10.3 high school 100-meter guy, 20.69, something like that, as well, 200 guy. So I think the big play potential there is there. He's also very smart, mature. He's hit the ground running. He's been impressive so far.
How much will Pup be able to do and whatever he's limited with? What opportunity does that present to Jaden and Aaron?
Yeah. Well, we view Pup as a starter. I mean, he's kind of like Jamari. I mean, he was an incredible football player and really leader, student of the game, great communicator, made everybody better when he was on the field. And obviously he battled that injury in the back half of the year. But, yeah, I mean, as soon as he gets healthy, he's right back in the mix. But in the meantime, obviously J-Rob and Aaron will be able to take a bunch of reps. Ty Jackson is the new player in that room, and he's obviously going to get a ton of work as well. So, in general, that room, with losing Shamar, there's an opportunity. A lot of those guys were playing for the first time last year, so I think there'll be a compound effect there year 1 to year 2.
A couple guys in the edge room transferring out. How big of an opportunity is this for LJ McCray to carve out a super consistent role in that room?
Yeah, no, we've moved LJ over to Jack, which I think has been beneficial. He also has the position flex to be able to play F, which he played last year. But, yeah, just in general, we've been very pleased. Cam James and Gums being the two that took a huge step. And then here comes Sapp being the steady kind of alpha vocal leader. You know, I'm really pleased with Jaden Woods. Kofi Wiggins has been impressive. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're always going to have some of that when you got a really deep room, you know, where a lot of players are very talented and capable. You're going to lose a few on occasion. I think that's just the world we're living in. So, yeah, good room still to this point. Kofi being a veteran and this Jaden Woods guy has stood out. And we haven't even started playing real football yet.
I just want to follow up on Nick Polk. He's got an interesting job to me because he's been in this world that's very structured in the NFL. He comes here and it's like kind of wide open. What's kind of like number one with this task list?
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. I think, and if he was up here, I think he would tell you the same thing. You know, I think it's a much more challenging job in terms of the variables. You know, you're recruiting, you're not drafting, right? And then obviously your stability, your roster is more fluid, right? Especially with 2 portal cycles, right? Now, you can view that a lot of ways, right? I think if you've got stability, you've got a good sound process, you've established good relationships, you've got a good system in place, maybe you could argue that that's an advantage for you, right? Which I think we're at that point. It also can be a nightmare to juggle. So I think we've done a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the chaos was 3 years ago, you know, when it was like there was a ton of uncertainty. There was no established market. We had no clue what was next. There was no rules, things that you never dreamed of that would be legal, become legal. I mean, we've all been living that life, right? So I think now we basically got to the point like, hey, we're not going to sit around and wait on anybody to tell us what to do. We're going to create our own system, kind of control what we can control and live within those parameters. That's what we've done probably the last 18 months. It's worked well for us. Now here comes rev share. And I do think that that will provide a little bit more stability where his experience with the cap management, the strategy around contracts, that's where, you know, that's part of the game, right? So I think ultimately I'm excited about, you know, he's hit the ground running, man. He's made my life easier already.
Coach, you mentioned on signing day when Dante Haywood, it's a tough position to take because a lot of moving parts have to know a lot. How have you seen him just in what you've been able to see early in the spring, and then how big of an opportunity is it for him to kind of hit the ground running now?
Yeah, first of all, I think he came in with a really good foundation from a strength conditioning standpoint. If you know that program, they work there. You know, they lift, they teach football. There's high expectations in that community, and I think that he has lived that, right? He's been a two-way player, returner, captain-type player for multiple years. So I think he came in with some maturity, and then the work capacity, he's used to that, you know. So I think you're getting a guy who's a little farther along. So now it's learning the schematics. But yeah, it's not too big for him. You can see that. He's taking it in. He's learning. I think he's gotten a little bit better. Yeah, that group, Stubbs, you know, Stubbs has been a little bit limited with soft tissue, but I think he's on his way back. Greg Smith has impressed me. You know, he's another guy in that safety room. I think his last year it was new, quarterback to safety. I think he's kind of settled in there. So he's got a good look in his eye. It'll be a big spring for him. Okay, guys. Thank y'all.